Outlander is back this week with the penultimate episode of Season 7, and it's safe to say that this was most definitely the most eventful and dramatic episode that we've had this season. With Clare Fraser being shot and it feeling like death was something that was on the horizon with the way that it was being teased to us with the conversation of Jamie and Clare around the fire. Not only was this emotional, heartbreaking and devastating to see Jamie's reaction, but it was one which made us feel all of those things too. With Amanda going through the stones on her own, William still having issues with coming to terms with his identity, and the Battle of Monmouth being something that the Continental Army looks set to be victorious in. Let's dive into the episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Outlander Season 7 Episode 15, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Jamie and Clare. Jamie and Clare had a heavy focus in this episode, and the title of the episode was pretty much based on an act that Jamie did. The episode was titled Written in My Own Heart's Blood, and he actually wrote his resignation to General Lee in the blood of his heart, the person he loved most, Clare, as she lay dying and suffering from the gunshot, showing that her life meant more to him than anything else. The entirety of the opening scene of the episode was us being shown Clare and Jamie and the different wars that they'd participated in throughout time, highlighting the amount of death that Clare had dealt with and also the battles that Jamie had fought in too. The section closed off with Clare saying, "War is inevitable, and death is too." A statement that has truth behind it as we saw them in wars across the ages, but also something that was extremely close to home during the closing moments. Jamie had spent the entirety of his time worrying about the men that were underneath him dying, and him feeling responsible for their lives, but once it sounded like the Battle of Monmouth was coming to a close and the Continental Army were going to be victorious due to the British Army retreating, some shots were fired that weren't a part of a battle, and Clare got caught in the crossfire, a moment which was massively unexpected. The whole focus was on Jamie potentially being killed in battle and him going beyond the call of duty and getting himself killed because of that, when in reality it was Clare that ended up doing that, staying with the soldiers that were wounded and being planted outside where there was the chance that she could have been harmed, and that's ultimately what happened. The vision inside of Clare's mind that we'd often see was about her expressing that something felt different this time, and her worrying about what it was that would come after death and how she'd be remembered. Jamie said how the stars wouldn't burn out and neither would they, and he was doing his best to ensure that they wouldn't, even resigning from his newly appointed position and being threatened with being treated like a deserter. Denzel Hunter, the surgeon that Clare values most, was brought in right at the end to retrieve the bullet from within her, and all that could be left for Jamie to do was pray, showing that it was down to fate and God whether she lived or died. Clare managed to stay alive and was communicating for the most part of it, and I do question whether or not this could be the end for Clare. I can't imagine the show continuing without her, and we've obviously got an entire season to go still, so I think she's gonna pull through and make some kind of recovery. Roger and Buck. Roger and Buck's episode was one of two halves. Two halves in the sense that they spent the first part disagreeing with each other, and then the second half reconciling, and Buck offering to do the kindest thing that he's ever offered before. Roger revealed to Buck that they were standing face to face with Buck's parents a few episodes back, and that he didn't say anything to him at the time because he didn't want anything to happen which could alter the very timeline that led to the present day. Something that could have resulted in Roger or even Buck not being born, which would impact the present day dramatically. However, as Buck rightly pointed out, Roger was always destined to go back to save his father, because if he hadn't have gone to that time period, then Dougal wouldn't have arrived at the door looking for Roger, and he then would never have laid eyes on Buck's mother. So everything that was unfolding was happening for a reason, and it was destiny. Roger wanted to get back to the original timeline, and he wrote a letter for Bree and left it at Ladybrock with the hopes that it would still be there a couple of hundred years later, something that she did end up finding in the same drawer. The letter essentially said that he hadn't found Jem yet and that he was going to do all that he could to reunite the family, so he wasn't willing to go back just yet in case his son was there. We obviously knew that Jem was with Bree, and she was planning on going back in time to be reunited with Roger, so it was genuinely a waste of his time staying there. The last we saw of Buck and Roger, Buck actually offered to go back through the stones to tell Bree what had been going on, just in case she didn't receive the letter, a gesture that Roger greatly appreciated. And it was here where Buck referred to Roger and Jem as his sons, and acknowledged the importance that they had with each other, showing that they were all family. It seems like we're going to be seeing Buck go through the stones and Bree no longer being there, or Bree could actually make it to Roger before Buck departs. With Bree giving Jem and Amanda jewels to go through the stones, we saw Amanda going off on her own, something that could have severe consequences, but if they're all thinking about Roger, then they should hopefully go to 1739 and be reunited with him. William and Lord John. During this episode, we saw that Lord John and Ian went and rescued William from Von Schnell following Captain Richardson's orders for him to be kidnapped and held as a prisoner. Once rescued, William was facing his identity crisis of not truly knowing where he belonged. Was he the son of a traitor, Jamie, or the son of Lord John, a respected individual that fought for king and country? Lord John told William about how Jamie was one of the greatest men that he'd ever met and that he should be proud to be his son. But he still wasn't having any of it, showing that he was extremely conflicted and that he felt lied to. It was only when Jane's sister ran towards him and expressed that Major Jenkins took Jane, got her arrested and was blaming her for the death of Captain Harkness that he got his purpose and drive back. Jane has given William some kind of stability, and I think it's because it's been taking his mind off of everything that's been going on with his family feud. So during the next episode, I imagine we're going to be seeing him looking to do his best to get Jane away from the gallows and the prospect of being killed for the murder that she did actually commit. I imagine he's going to be going to Lord John to get some kind of help, something that will see him looking to one of his fathers. When William was rescued, Ian allowed Von Schnell to live, but later on in the episode he snuck up on Von Schnell and killed him, and said that he'd live to regret it if he let him live. I feel this is something that he considered and thought about because of his wife Rachel, a Quaker that didn't agree with war and violence, and he said that he likely wouldn't kill as he was a scout. With there being a focus on the blood on his hands, I feel it was symbolic of him going back on his word to his newly made wife. My review of the episode. I thought this was a strong episode of the show. I was initially disappointed that we didn't really see any of the Battle of Monmouth taking place, but when it came to the final third, I understood why. We needed the screen time in this episode to be allocated to Jamie and Clare, the thoughts that she was having inside of her head, and it contributing to the weight of that feeling that she could have been killed in the closing moments of the episode. The character Jamie was performed so well during this episode. The scenes that were focused on Clare as she laid there on the cusp of death were filled with emotion, passion, heartbreak, and you really felt everything that he was going through. Even when he was speaking to God and saying that he was going to fight off the angels if they came for Clare in the church, his voice was filled with such wrath and anger that he wasn't ready for her to die. We saw the love that he had for her and that she was the single thing that mattered most to him, something we already knew, but seeing it this way just got their love across even more. This was definitely one of the best episodes in the season, and I'd probably place it up there with the mid-season finale of Season 7. It was an immersive one where we got an even amount of time between the different story arcs, and they're now all at the cusp of being at the peak of their stories as we enter the finale. I thought the use of the scenes by the fire in this episode, where we got to take a look inside of Claire's mind, was a creative touch that I feel we've not really seen in the show before. It allowed us to question what was going to happen, and it added more weight to the climax of the episode. I'm guessing that Clare is going to survive, because I can't see how the show would continue without her, and I'm also thinking that Bree and Roger will stay put in 1739 for a short while. So I do wonder where that's going to leave the Rob Cameron storyline, and if Roger will have a desire to go back and look to seek justice. The second part of Season 7 has been entertaining to watch, and I feel next week's finale is definitely going to be an emotional and an eventful one as we bid farewell to the show for what I imagine will be around another year. So, there you have it, Outlander Season 7 Episode 15, Ending Explained. If you want to see every episode of Outlander being broken down, then click on the card in the top corner. There's a playlist there for Season 7, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. What did you think of this episode? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.